First of all, there's probably an understanding that you're not going to have a successful organization if you don't have motivated people. But the other thing is that you won't have motivated people unless you understand motivation. And so that's really the essence of it. So let's see what we've got here. Motivation. If you look at the word motivation, it tends to imply movement from one place to another place, or from one activity to another activity. And so words like move, act, do, etc. all sort of ring of motivation. Move, act, do in behavior. Another way to look at it is to look at the word, and there are two words there. One is motive, and the other one is ation. So what words come to mind when you see motive? Motive, probably one of them would be a reason. What other words? Reasons, what else?
Purpose.
Purpose would be a good one, you betcha. Purpose. Objective, perhaps? Other words? Reason, purpose, objective, perhaps even a goal. And if you look at the word ation, what's a common word that means the same thing as ation? You've seen it 100 times, millions of times. Ation means what? Oh, don't be afraid. You know what it means. Take a guess. What's ation?
Action.
Absolutely, absolutely. Ation is action. And so what you got here is at the very root of the word motivation, you've got goal-directed action. And that's what motivation is all about. Something that you want, goal-directed action. So let's look at motivation from a personal point of view. From a personal point of view, most people suggest that this question has to be answered before someone will do anything. And that is, what's in it for me? And that is either going to be to gain something or to avoid some sort of loss. Now, you think for yourself, well, surely some people do things that isn't either to gain something or to avoid losing something that you want to keep. There's got to be other things that is in life rather than this question, what's in it for me? Well, let's think about it for a minute. Like, suppose somebody who's very wealthy gives all his money away, gives it all away to charity. He becomes a monk. He goes and lives on a mountaintop, and there he stays for the rest of his life. So, can you answer this question for him there? What would be the answer for him? Why? Why would he do that? What's in it for him?
A good feeling.
Pardon me?
A good feeling.
Perhaps a good feeling. Perhaps relief. Maybe he stole all the money, and he feels guilty, and so he gives it all to charity, and then he becomes very, very religious. Other people would say he's buying insurance, after-death insurance. And so there's always a reason for somebody to do something, even though it's very, very benevolent. Like right now, you see the Middle East in the headlines, and so there's a lot of activity that's going on there that's not too pleasant. Well, the news that you're getting is pretty well sanitized. It used to be very, very graphic, and that was way back in the Vietnamese War. And that's why it's sanitized today, because the Vietnamese War, there was a revolution in the States because of all the body bags being brought back, because of people being killed, children being burned and mutilated and so forth. So they said, no more, we're not going to show all this stuff. So it's very, very sanitized. But I remember when Beirut was the hot spot, and some women and children were crossing a square. And all of a sudden, gunfire rang out, and all of a sudden the kids were flat on the ground. They just hit the ground, and the mother's right on top of them. Completely selfless, or very, very unselfish act. So what would be the gain or the avoidance of loss? What's in it for the mothers? You know, if they feel this thing, at least their kids didn't, right? And so no matter what you do, there is this issue of what's in it for me, and it could be very, very benevolent as opposed to economic, so to speak. So it's a very, very real question. So let's look at it from a motivation point of view. All of us here are in the automobile business, correct? And so our business is to sell automobiles. Well, have you seen anybody come to your house ever to sell, I don't know, encyclopedias? Or they don't sell encyclopedias door to door anymore, right? But you've had what do they sell now door to door? Vacuum cleaners, right? That sort of thing. Well, there is a formula that is used in sales, at least in the door-to-door sales that I'm familiar with, that a person memorizes. And a person memorizes this pitch or this presentation, and you get enough presentations in front of you, and the odds are that sooner or later you're going to sell so many vacuum cleaners. The reason I know about the presentation is my brother Bill used to train at that time encyclopedia salespeople. And if you see two people going around, one is the trainer and one is the trainee. And the pitch is very detailed. They say, memorize it, don't vary it. This is what you have to do. And you'll make money if you make enough calls. And the pitch was something like, park your car legally. Because you don't want to be in the middle of your presentation and then all of a sudden somebody knocks on the door and yak, 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 and move your car, and all of a sudden, you're disturbed and so on. So the very first one is to park your car legally. The second one is to be very, very polite. So when you ring the doorbell and someone comes to the door, you say, "Dear sir," or "Madam," whatever the case may be, and then you carry on in your presentation. Well, when my brother was training one of these young men to sell, as he was beginning, he parked his car legally. He went to the door. He rang the doorbell. The person came to the door, and he said, "Dear sir," or "Madam," whatever the case may be, and carried on. That is an absolutely true story. He memorized that pitch to the point of "Dear sir," or "Madam." So the pitch has basically 4 components. It has a feature, a pivot, a benefit, and a qualification point. The feature is the action that you want that person to do. For example, you want to buy a red convertible. For example, what was your name?
Shane.
Shane, where are you from, Shane?
Right here.
Right there?
No, right here.
Oh, right here. Whereabouts today?
Southside.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a community that you live in?
Fairmont.
Fairmont, okay. And what your name is?
Shane.
Yeah. Shane. Shane, I'm going to focus on the feature for you just for a minute. Shane, I want to sell you this red convertible. But you're really interested in what's in it for you, isn't that correct?
Absolutely.
Did you see that pivot point? The red convertible, but you pivot, what you're interested in is what's really in it for you. And so you're pivoting to the benefits, and the benefits has to be something either to gain something or to avoid loss of something. So pivot, what you're really interested in is what it can do for you, isn't that right?
Yes.
Right. Well, you know what, Shane? If you buy this red convertible, you're going to be part of the jet set of Fairmont in Lethbridge, and that is a fact. Isn't that worth it to you?
How many girls come with the jet set?
So you see, I'm getting a red light here, right? A red light. So you go back, and because this jet set business didn't work, and he got this red light, and so you go back to the feature again. But you know, Shane, it's got a Hemi. And that is safety. Because when you and your friend are going down that highway and you pass that Volkswagen, you can get by that Volkswagen fast enough so that Greyhound bus doesn't come along. Safety, right?
Safety doesn't work for me.
Doesn't it? I got another. Okay, so then you get the red lights to the point, at least hopefully you'll get enough points that the benefit of buying this red convertible is going to be greater than the cost of the convertible, and therefore you have a convert. In other words, it's not the feature that you're selling, it really is the benefit that you're selling. And you have to pivot away from the feature to the benefit until that person goes like this, should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I? And all of a sudden this teeter-totter, and it probably looks like something like this. There's a teeter-totter here, and there's the cost, there's the benefits, and when the benefits outweigh the cost, the person has no choice. I gotta take it. And so that's the formula, at least the one that I'm familiar with. And I'm convinced that if you're going to try to convince anybody to do anything, it's a type of formula like that. Because what's in it for them is really the question. And so it is with motivation. What's in it for them has to be answered. And what's in it for them has to be answered in your organizations as well. So from a personal point of view, it really is, okay, this question here, what's in it for me? And of course you need to show the benefits. Now let's go to a historical point of view. What's the oldest form of motivation at the rate? You see I'm getting ink already? Right? And did you see me go like this yet? No, that's all right? Okay. It happens. It happened yesterday. This lady that was sitting right here yesterday, I was doing this workshop right in here. She after she tells me, I got to tell you something. And she tells me I had a mustache, a half a one, right about here. So I'm counting on you. Okay. So from a historical point of view, what is the oldest, probably the strongest form of motivation that there is?
Fear.
Fear, indeed. You betcha. Fear is very, very, very powerful. Like if you went back far enough, you could pick out the motivator from 100 yards. There would be no question in your mind who that person was and what he looked like. He probably has that great big barrel chest. He's probably got a very thick neck and maybe small ears. I don't know, like that. So motivation to that person was not an issue, not at all, because fear was his prime form of motivation. And if you go back as far as the Middle Ages, motivation is not a problem for you either. If you owned a castle, you basically owned the land, you owned the people that worked on the land, and if they didn't put out the way you wanted them to put out, you strung them up, stretched them out, taught them a lesson. Motivation is not an issue for you. And even as far as the 1800s, that's just a couple hundred years ago. Motivation is not an issue. Like if someone owed you money and they didn't pay, they went to debtor's prison. And they didn't get out unless that bill was paid. And because they don't have any money, somebody who loves them has to get them out, or they stood there or stayed there for the rest of their lives. It's debtor's prison. Motivation's, that's... But today, how powerful is it for you? What can you do? It's a very powerful tool. Like if you can utilize it, it's a powerful, powerful tool. Like, you guys ever gone raiding gardens anytime? Some of you must have gone raiding gardens. Right? Well, I have. And when we were kids, it was a lot of fun to do raiding gardens. Now, have you ever heard of the farmer who had a shotgun that was with shells full of salt? Instead of, and I don't know if it's true or not, if they can actually do this or if they've done that. But when I was a kid, it was true up here. It was true up here. And so there was 4 or 5 of us guys, and then we just kind of snuck under the fence, and we pulling these carrots out, and they're big, long carrots, nice ones, really nice carrots. And so giggle, giggle, snort, snort, and we're pulling these carrots out. Then all of a sudden the dog starts barking. And all of a sudden the lights turn on in the house. And all of a sudden we see this silhouette of this guy with a shotgun in his head, and he's coming out of the house. And we think of police, mama, help, you know, I'm going to get killed, and all the rest of it, right? And run like the wind we did. And then we regroup, like, you know, panting, and one of the persons that was in our group said, "Did you see that fence?" And half of us said, "What fence? We never even saw the damn fence." It up and over and gone. It's amazing what you can do if you're really afraid. And so fear is a powerful tool, but how powerful is it for you in your toolbox today? You know, what's going to happen if you use intimidation or if you use threat in the workplace? What's likely to happen, do you figure? You can probably imagine what's likely to happen. Who's going to be in trouble? Is it going to be you, or is it going to be the other guy? It's probably you that's going to be in trouble. Fear and see, the guy's not going to die. You know, it's you that's going to be in a problem. Like, anybody here from BC at all? Anybody from British Columbia? Nobody? You are? What part are you from?
Cranbrook.
Cranbrook?
Yeah.
I used to. Well, when I first started out in this business, I was the chair of business at Kirk College in Kamloops. And I was a young guy in my 20s, and I didn't know beans or nothing. And I'm from Alberta. And I didn't really realize it, but BC is a very strong unionized province. Am I correct or no? Yes? Yeah, very much so. Even the faculty representative was called the shop steward at the college, which gives you a tone of what kind of strength the union movement has in British Columbia. So here's me, a young guy, and I know beans from nothing, you know, and okay, this one instructor, faculty member, I thought, there's something wrong here. We need to do an evaluation with this guy. He's not getting, like, something not quite right. So I start the process in my very first year in that position. I start the process for an evaluation. And everybody looked at me and says, "This is heresy. What are you doing? This is crazy. You can't do that." And you know what? I couldn't because there was a revolution, basically. They were basically saying, you know, who are you and who do you think you are? Because, you know, like, the threat or intimidation was just not in the toolbox. And that was basically what the other fellow thought was a threat. So fear, if you use it, this is basically using a stick of some sort. And fundamentally what that boils down to, or what the result of the stick is revolution. And believe me, probably you're the one that's going to be investigated. It's not the fellow that you were trying to investigate. I learned in a hurry. Back off. You don't do things like that. So, okay, if fear isn't in your toolbox with respect to trying to motivate your folks that you're working with, what tool do we use commonly today instead of fear? What do we use? You know what you use.
Money.
Money, of course you do. You use money. And money is what? It's some sort of incentive. And there's all kinds of forms of incentives. Like, for example, I know you guys, you're not hourly, right? You're all salaried people, correct? But if an hourly person has incentives, what do you pay him if he stays overtime? Time and a half, right? And sometimes you pay him double time. And I've heard of people even being paid triple time because of the situation that they were in. It was a holiday, it was something or other, and all of a sudden triple time. So an incentive is something like, if you do this, I'll give you this. If you do this, I'll give you this. Now, there's problems with an incentive system, and let me try to explain what the problems are. The best way to imagine an incentive system, or to begin to understand it, is picture a donkey. And in front of the donkey is a stick, and at the end of the stick is a carrot. And that is a perfect example of what an incentive system is. It's some sort of carrot. Now, there has to be certain characteristics in order for this incentive system to work. You can't have any old dirty old rotten old carrot. What kind of carrot you going to have? Something juicy, right? Something nice. The donkey has to smell it and want it, right? That's the kind of carrot you want. An attractive carrot. What about the stick? What does it have to be?
Long.
Short. Tell me?
Long.
Long or what?
Short.
Short. Now what is it? Long or short?
I'd say long.
Short enough, just out of reach, but long enough, just out of reach, right? So that if it's right there, that the donkey can bite it and eat it, and doesn't have to pull a cart at all. But if it's long enough to be just out of reach and short enough that it has to be attractive, this donkey is thinking this carrot is maybe it's worthwhile. What does the donkey have to be? I want the carrot. He has to be what? Hungry. He has to be hungry. And the cart, relative to the carrot, has to be what? Not too heavy. So you have to have it light enough, right? So here you got it. What? You get a juicy enough carrot, you get a short enough stick, you get a hungry enough donkey, and a light enough cart. This thing moves right along. No issue, right? Now, I recognize this is debatable, but at work you're not dealing with donkeys. Right? You're dealing with people. And people recognize the significance of the stick. And they can say, I can chase that stick for 100 years, I'm never going to get it, or that carrot. I'm never going to get it. So every once in a while, what do you have to do to the person or the donkey?
Let him have a bite.
You have to give them a bite of the carrot. That's the whole nature of the game. Now, the moment you give that person a bite of the carrot, what happens is that you've upset the formula that makes this thing work in the first place. So the donkey is no longer as hungry. If he's no longer as hungry, what do you have to do to the stick? Or to the carrot, rather? Bigger, juicier carrot, or to the stick? Shorter, or to the cart? Lighter. Then you end up paying more and more for less and less. And that's the problem with an incentive motivation system. Eventually everybody can get to the point where I can do anything I want, and I can do anything, or I can have anything I need without doing anything extra at all. And if you want me to do this extra thing, you're going to have to pay me in massive doses to get this. I take the overtime example. I wanted to go with my kids, and I promised to take them out skiing, and I missed last week, and I missed this week, and you want me to come again? If you want me to come, I'm going to see if you want me to come again, you're going to have to pay me. Now, let me give you an extreme example of why this doesn't work in the long run. Has anybody heard of Jack Welch? He's on TV every once in a while. American TV. Used to be CNN, but CNN has changed its format somewhat. But he was president of General Electric in the States, and he retired in 1980 something. And he's often called to talk about him and his life and how he manages and people and yak. How much money did Jack Welch make a year in his last year of a year before retiring at General Electric? Take a guess how much he made. Take a guess. 1980s. What do you think would make president of General Electric? Any idea? Huh?
9 million.
9 million? Come on, somebody. What do you think? I'll give you one more guess. No, it wasn't the But he made $120 million for 1 year's work only, and for him only. Now, can you imagine that kind of a salary and benefits? Like, this is the total package for him. But what are you going to pay this guy to come in overtime for 2 hours on Saturday? You see what I'm saying here? That's where that incentive system, now, believe me, an incentive system, everybody uses it, right? And it's ingrained in our system. And I'm not saying not to use an incentive system, but I am saying that if you count on the incentive system as being your only form of motivation in the organization, what happens is that you're going to go bankrupt. You can't afford it. You can't afford that kind of a system. So what do we got here? Incentive. Okay, that's based on a reward of some sort, or maybe a carrot, and that leads to, I'm coloring the words a little bit, but I'm making the point that you really can't afford to use an incentive system as your only system of motivation within the organization. So where are we going now in terms of organizations? How are we trying to motivate people? If you can't use the stick and incentive systems have their limitations, where do we go? Well, what's happening is that we tend to move towards attitude motivation. And by attitude motivation, we're saying that the guy who has his head in the right place. And it's hard to pinpoint, what it is and how it gets there. But you can recognize it when you see it. Like, here's an example that's used often. There's a pile of bricks over here. And somebody is putting bricks in a wheelbarrow and moving them to that corner back there. And you're a researcher, and you ask this guy, what are you doing? And he looks at you and he says, what am I doing? What do you think I'm doing? You see those bricks over there? I'm putting them in a wheelbarrow and I'm moving them over there. That's what I'm doing. Researching. And you ask another guy who's doing exactly the same job, and you say, what are you doing? And he says, can't you see? I'm building a bridge. See, one guy is moving bricks and the other guy is building a bridge. And that's, you can recognize the attitude. But trying to pinpoint what the hell this attitude is and how you get there is the difficult part. So building a bridge. When I was going to school, there was a terrific place I used to work, and I used to work there over the summers. And I was a bartender in a hotel. And it was a jumping place. It was great to work there. People came, they had fun. Our shift started at 6 and ended about 11:30 for last call. And then by midnight we were done. And these were the days when you had to be 21 to be a bartender. And I loved the job because you'd be invited to all the parties. Right? You could make whiskey sours. Some people didn't even know what they were. You could make daiquiris. You could make, well, I won't go into it. You could make very, very special drinks that people loved, and they were terrific. Anyway, never mind. It was a place that was a wonderful place to work. And so, people used to come at 5:30 sometimes to their shift. You say, what are you doing here? It's only 5:30. Well, I had nothing to do. They weren't expecting any more pay. They just had nothing to do, so they came at 5:30. And then I remember another time, I was on the floor alone, and I was really busy. The place was packed. I couldn't keep up. I'm trying to keep up, and I just couldn't. One of my colleagues was in the bar at the same time. This is the lounge. And he was in the lounge at the same time, and he saw that I was running into trouble. So he was with his friends, and they were having a drink and chatting and so on and so forth. He sees me in trouble. He gets up. He goes into the closet. We had a dressing closet in the hotel. He puts on his jacket. It was a red jacket. He puts on his cummerbund, and he comes out and he helps me. 15, 20, 25 minutes. I don't know what the hell it was, but once it got settled down, right, he took his stuff off and he went and sat and he was with his friends again. He didn't ask for any more pay. It was just something to do, and you can see the attitudes, and that's the kind of attitude that you want to try to build in an organization. And we're talking about not only the employee's attitude, but we're talking about the corporate attitude as well as the leader's attitude. Like corporations have a culture about them, and they have an attitude. Like my wife would never shop at Loblaws. I don't know why. I said, why? Let's go to Loblaws. It's close. I don't like Loblaws. Come on. Let's go to... I want to go to Safeways. What do you think? They got different apples than Loblaws? Let's go. No. There was something about Loblaws that you just didn't like. It was a corporate feeling about it. And so corporations have attitudes too that you can feel. I bet you walked into a place sometime, you said, I wouldn't mind working here. Huh? You ever walk into another place, you said, if I had to work here, I think I'd kill myself? Right? Yeah. Because you can feel the corporate attitude. So we're talking about attitudes from a corporate point of view, and we're talking attitudes from a leadership point of view, and we're talking attitudes from an employee point of view. So let's see what an attitude is. When you see the word attitude, I like your attitude. What other words come to mind? I like one of them might be personality. I like your personality. What other words come to mind? I like your personality, I like your what? If you like your attitude, you like your personality, there's another word that means the same thing. Pardon me?
Your demeanor.
Oh, can I spell that one? I don't know. You know, you're going to find out sooner or later, but my spelling is awful. Always has been. And sometimes you probably can't hardly make out the printing, isn't that correct? Yeah, do you know why that is? Because when I was a kid, I used to scribble. And the reason I used to scribble says nobody could read the word, and they don't know whether I spelled them right or not. I used to make an E and dot it. Take your choice, E or I don't care. I honestly, and that's a carryover. So help me out with demeanor if this is working out okay. Is that right? What?
Or I think.
It is an O. It is an O. Demeanor. I like your demeanor. I like your personality. I like your character, maybe. Oops. Now you got me nervous. I like your character. I like your personality. I like your demeanor. I like your character. I like your outlook. Oops. Gee, whiz, you guys are really getting on my nerves. I like your outlook. Tell me something. Is it something on the inside or is it something on the outside? Attitudes. It's both, really, right? It's you recognize it on the outside, but it really starts on the inside. So what does a person do on the inside? I mean, you bubble and gurgle a lot, but that's a support system. Like, what do you ultimately? How do they know you're there? Like, if you were to be an organ donor, when would they know that it's time to harvest? What's your thinking? What do you do on the inside, and what happens when they say this is time? You know? Well, what you do is basically you think on the inside, and as soon as you got a straight line in terms of those thoughts, right? You're brain dead, and it's all over, right? And therefore, it's harvest time. Correct? Okay. So, what does a person do on the inside? Is it something on the inside or the outside? We said it's both. And what does a person do on the inside? A person thinks. A person has certain thoughts. These become thought habits. These thought habits become beliefs, and beliefs turn into behavior. And all of a sudden, we can recognize the person and try to make some sort of a judgment with respect to their attitude. And that really starts about what they believe or what they think or how they feel about something. And these thoughts become thought habits, and all of a sudden these thought habits are reflected in the kind of behavior, because that is who you are. That's what you believe. Now, there's certain things about attitudes that we have to recognize. First of all, attitudes are contagious. Attitudes are very, very contagious. Have you, you drive on Deerfoot every once in a while? Calgary? I hate Deerfoot. Anybody else hate Deerfoot, driving on Deerfoot? I got some guys that they avoid Deerfoot like the plague. They don't want to go there. They hate it. You know what? Deerfoot is like driving in Coaldale if you go to Los Angeles. Go to Los Angeles, you see some pretty aggressive of driving. I'm down here, here I am. I'm driving away. People, well, you know what they're doing? I make one little mistake. You know what? Honk, honk, honk. And you should see the hand signals they give you. Yeah, and I said, look at my license plates. I'm not from wrong here, and I'm trying to do things right. Well, it takes 2 or 3 days, but then you get used to the rhythm, right? You get used to the rhythm, and then you get used to the traffic, and then sooner or later, not too long after, right? You bring down there and you say, and you got your hand on the horn just ready, and you say, go ahead, somebody, make a mistake. I want to honk my horn too. So attitudes, they can be very, very contagious. Are any of you here British? I got nothing against the British. Nothing. I got nothing against the British. But this hotel that I was working in when I was a kid had a change in management. And the guy was stiff upper lip British. And I never met him before, right? But here's the story. Here's me. I'm coming out of the lounge. I got a tray full of stuff, right? I didn't see him. He was right at the door. I didn't see him. And I hit him, and I spilled, and I looked up, and there he was, the new manager. And holy cow, he said nothing to me. Nothing. He didn't say, it's okay, that's not, it's fine, it's hello. He didn't say nothing. Here's me, sorry, clean up. And I'm thinking to myself, what the hell's with him, right? He didn't say anything. He just stiff upper lip British. Okay, and so I finally get cleaned up and I'm heading for the kitchen. And if any of you ever worked in the hotel or restaurant business, you know that your best friend has to be the chef in the kitchen. He can make you or break you. Sometimes he won't even put up your order until it's very, very late, right? And so it's very important to be friendly with the chef. He says, you want a tip? Let me give you a tip. I'm pushing it a little bit, but you know what? Within 2 years, nobody came to work at 5:30 for a 6 o'clock shift. There used to be shrinkage started to take place. Do you guys know what shrinkage is? Product loss. Product loss. So all kinds of negative things happen. So what I'm saying is that attitudes are contagious and they tend to flow from the top down. And so, if you got a negative attitude or a negative feeling about your people, you will spread that negative attitude to your people, just like that manager spread it to the people that worked in that hotel. Attitudes are contagious. There's another thing about attitudes. You can't hide them. Like if you don't like somebody, what do you think? They don't know? What do you have to do? Spell it out? I hate your guts. I mean, you don't have to spell it out. Everything you say, your whole body language tells you don't like that person. And then you'll get a reaction accordingly. Here, like we were talking about Los Angeles, the Hollywood days and they have parties and all the rest of it. 2 young actresses go to a party and they can't stand each other because they're competitive. But you can see the words that they're saying. I'm going to pick on you. Okay? What was your name again?
Carrie.
Carrie? And I'm the other actress, right? Oh, Carrie, how good it is to see you again.
Oh,
And you go up and you hug. And you give a kiss that goes into the air, so you don't mess up, right? Who the hell is kidding who? In spite of all the words that you're saying, you know that she doesn't like her, and you know that the other person doesn't like her, in spite of the words, right? So your attitudes, you can't hide them. Not only are they contagious, you can't hide them. Nor could the corporation hide what they think. I can talk about Woodwards now because they're no longer here, but when Woodwards were in town here, everybody sort of just signed in to go to work and so on and so forth. But for some reason or another, they instigated a time clock in the downtown Woodwards here. Everybody was all upset. Why would they be upset? Well, what is a time clock telling them? I don't trust you. And you don't trust us anymore? Oh, no, 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 no. It's not that we don't trust you. It's just just in case we make a mistake, you've got proof positive that you actually work those hours. Like, who the hell is kidding who? Do you see what we're saying? Even from a corporate point of view, you can't hide what the corporation is thinking about the people who work there. You go to a bank. Everybody goes to a bank. You ever see the pins in a bank? What's on the pins? What does the chain tell you? Why is it there? Because they think you're going to steal them, right? They think you're going to steal the damn pins. So the bank really is saying to you, I know you're a thief, and we all know it too. I'm pushing it a little bit. But those pins, they cost $20, $25. And I'm wondering, why did they put the chain on there? Of course, it'll disappear. Well, so what? Why don't you buy cheap pens for $1, put your logo all over the damn thing, and let people take them if they want? And then they'll say, oh yeah, you deal with CIBC, and they say, oh, Bank of Montreal, whatever it happens to be. But putting a chain on the pen, to me, subtly is giving you a little bit of a different message. So, you know, your attitudes are contagious, and you can't hide them. So you have to think about, okay, what kind of an attitude do I really have? What do I really believe about me and the people that work for me? And so you have to come to terms with that. Like who are you, and who are they, and what kind of people are they? There was some research done, folks. There was some research done in the States by Tom Peters and Bob Waterman. And this was several years ago, and there were two university professors trying to figure out who the hell's doing, what companies are doing it right. And they wrote a book on this, In Search of Excellence. And in the book, one of the key things was that the successful organizations believed, right through that organization, they believed in themselves, they believed in the leadership, and they believed in their people, that they could meet the challenges that they're going to be facing. A very positive mental attitude about who they were and what they could do. And if you have an attitude like that, it tends to be contagious. And you can't hide it if you have it. And here's the best part about an attitude like that, is that there is a self-fulfilling prophecy. You tend to get what you expect. Let me just jot that down. So you tend to get what you expect, and that is yourself and others too. Let me try to give you an example here of that. Do you folks know the story? It's a kindergarten story about the little red choo-choo train. Do you know this story? You know, these locomotives, they come up to this great big huge hill, and they go, oh man, we can't do that. And so they pull over to the side and they idle their engines, and there's 2 or 3 locomotives back up. And then this little red choo-choo train comes along, and it's a kindergarten story. What does that little red choo-choo train say? I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, and so on and so forth. And at the end of the story, what does it say?
I know it.
I knew I could, I knew I could, I knew I could. I don't think there is a more profound story that you can tell young kids, because thinking that you can is the absolute prerequisite to success. If you think you can't, you don't even try. You know, and here's a manifestation about, I guess we can, and therefore if you think you can, that you do it. At one time, it was considered physiologically impossible to run fast for the human body. Physiologic could not run faster than a mile in 4 minutes. Can't do it, physiologically. Until who did it? A guy named Roger Bannister, and he did it in about 1950 something or other. So, okay, that is not the end of the story. What's more impressive is that once Roger Bannister did it, about 3 or 4 other people did it within weeks. of knowing that it could be done. So thinking that you can is an absolute prerequisite, not only for yourself, but thinking that your people can too is also an absolute prerequisite. And you can't hide that kind of feeling. Now, just thinking you can is not going to do it for you. I mean, there's got to be some activity. Like a little while back, there was a book come out called The Secret. Remember that book? What did it tell you in essence? The Secret. Think positive hard enough and wonderful things will happen, and you'll get money in an envelope coming into your mailbox. I'm exaggerating. But you know what? The Secret is garbage from my point of view without action. You can't just think and it's going to happen. You have to do something about it. There was this guy who wanted to win the lotto, and he prayed every day. He prayed. Every day. For weeks he prayed, I want to win the lotto, I want to win the lotto. Finally, this big booming voice comes out and it says, Louis, meet me halfway. Buy a ticket. You got to do something about it. So, thinking that you can, it's a prerequisite. But also thinking that others can is also a prerequisite. For example, listen to this. Imagine this scenario. Stupid kid. Jesus, that kid's stupid. Martha, the kid's going to get into trouble. What's going to happen, do you figure, in about a 10-year period, maybe? What do you think the end result would be? Almost everybody would guess, the kid's going to get into trouble. He's probably not in school anymore. There is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Here's another one that's even, maybe more pronounced, about how your attitudes about the capability of your people work out. There was a young lady who had a very, very difficult pregnancy, and there wasn't going to be any more. That's it. There's no more. And when she was convalescing in the hospital, she happened to overhear the nurses talking. And the nurses said something like, isn't it too bad that the kid will never walk? And the mother said nothing. She said, all right, maybe this is the cross that I'm going to have to bear. But this kid will never see a better mother than me. I'm going to be the best damn mother that this kid has ever seen. And she goes home. What she didn't know was the nurses were talking about another kid, not her kid. Okay, so here's the scenario. The kid's over here growing up a little bit, making noise like I want to grow over here. What is the best mother in the world going to do? Pick him up, move him over there. Plays for a while, makes noises like I want to go over here. Best darn mother in the world, picks him up, moves him over here. What's the end result? Kid never walks because never given an opportunity to walk because the mother thinks or assumes that the kid can't walk. Now the story is fictitious, but it makes the point about how important attitudes are with respect to capability. And sometimes people are suffering because of underwork or under challenge. Thinking that you can is part of it, and sometimes being underutilized is part of it too. And if you think people can, and you believe it, you tend to give them responsibility, you tend to give them a challenge, you tend to communicate more with them, you tend to give them more recognition, and they say to themselves, what's in it for me? And all these other things are in it for them, which becomes motivational for them. So thinking that you can is part of it. Okay, there's one other thing I think about attitudes that you need to know about, and it's called the Pitts effect. The best way to explain what the Pitts effect is to just show how it happened. I'm from Ontario, and I'm from Thunder Bay, and Karamat, Ontario is about 250 miles north of Thunder Bay. It's in bush country. Karamat, Ontario is in fact a bush camp, at least when I'm familiar with it. And it's owned by Marathon Realty. And they have bunkhouses there, maybe 500 men would live in the bunkhouse. They would eat in a cook shack, and there might be 2, 3, 4 families there, and that's about it. Now the problem with Northern Ontario and cutting pulpwood for Marathon Realty is that you can only do it in the wintertime. You can't do it in the summer. There's too much muskeg. And the trucks, there's no road. But once it freezes, then you can start moving this pulpwood. But in the wintertime, there's only so much daylight in northern Ontario. Therefore, you have only so much time to cut wood. They didn't cut at night. And therefore, you had a hell of a lot of time on these guys' hands who were living in a bunkhouse. And they were all young, frisky guys. So what do? Okay, the bowling is free, the movies are free, the pool hall is free, virtually curling was free, everything was free just to keep these guys busy. In spite of all that, like any bush camp, they're plagued with practical jokes. And so they try to play practical jokes on each other. Here's the other thing. The cook shack, the cook, or the chef in the cook shack, was Chinese. And unlike Alberta or British Columbia, at that time there was very few Chinese people in northern Ontario in the demographics. And he was the only Chinese in camp, and who was the brunt of all the practical jokes in Keynote Ontario? Wing Lee, of course. Now, the jokes aren't vicious, right? But they would be, well, they would sneak into his cook shack, and they'd set the pots in the cupboards in such a way and close the door very carefully, so that when he came in the morning to open up and then clang, 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 all the pots everywhere, ha ha. And are you familiar with garter snakes? Harmless. Garter snakes, harmless. But if you put one in somebody's pillow, when the guy goes to bed at night, the heat of the body draws the snake. Yay, 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 yay. And that's a lot of fun too. And they used to call it Frenching the bed in Ontario too. I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but in Alberta they call it short sheeting the bed. In other words, you make the sheet up in such a way that you can't go through because there's nothing there. And then you have to tear it all apart. You get all upset. Yak, 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 yak. Lots of fun too. Ha ha. And so on. Wing Lee was the best sport. He said nothing. And these guys finally realized, he's a pretty good guy. And so what they decided to do is make a plaque for him. And this was to welcome Wing Lee to Camp 57, Karamat, Ontario, 19 such and such. And they decided they're going to give it to them at the Christmas banquet. And they did. They bring this up. And then Wing Lee was so often the brunt of practical jokes that he thought this was a practical joke. He says, I'm not taking it. And they promised, no, Wing Lee, we're serious this time. From this point forward, you're one of the boys. He says, well, what about the pots? No more pots in the cupboard. And of course, no more snakes in the pillow. Finally, they convince him that they're serious, and he begins to smile. And he goes up front to the microphone, and he says, okay, you no more Frenchie Wing Lee's bed, Wing Lee no more pee-pee in the soup. That's the Pitts effect. It's a boomerang effect for negative attitudes. It's a boomerang. So what do we got? This is why attitudes are so important. Your attitude is contagious to those around you. You can't hide what the hell you're thinking. You can't hide your attitudes or beliefs about people and yourself. There is a self-fulfilling prophecy. You tend to get what you expect from yourself, but not only that, but from others too. And there's that negative Pitts effect that you have to watch out for. So negative attitudes, there are supervisors all over this country that have banana peels in their offices. And they don't even know they're there. So, you know what? Attitude motivation begins with you. It begins with you because it spreads to the folks you work with. And there is that self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay, thanks very much, folks.